Welcome back, and today we have Broadway grosses, and we have some interesting things to talk about this week, so let's get into it. Up first, we have & Juliet, which went from 100.58% capacity last week to 92.76% this week, going from 1,229,540 to almost $1 million. So yeah, this was a pretty significant drop for & Juliet, and definitely its weakest week in the past couple months. Still fine, not going anywhere, nothing to worry about, but it is a considerable drop from the last week, and Juliet has never really fallen this much or this significantly since January, or since this year began, so it's done very decent. So but it's better that this happens at the beginning of March than it would in January and February. A Beautiful Noise went from 72.8% last week capacity to 62.42% capacity this week, going from $883,733 last week to $801,215 this week. A very significant drop, and not a good look for A Beautiful Noise. Definitely is not performing the way that I even thought it was going to go. It did very well in January and February with $1 million, but the past 2 weeks have not been kind to it, and the show might close this year. It's way too early to tell, and I think we'll see where the show is come the fall, because I think it will do well in the summer, but definitely is starting to lose its momentum that it had when it first opened. I usually don't cover Aladdin, mainly because Aladdin does the same business, but this week was its first week under $1 million in like years. So it went from 1,405,452 last week to $989,176 this week, going from 99% capacity to 93.51% capacity. And the average ticket went from like $90 to $70. I don't know exactly what caused this, but a very significant drop, and it's going to be interesting to see if Aladdin's maybe starting to lose its appeal since it's been around for so long. But again, nothing to be concerned about yet. Bad Cinderella is doing bad once again, going from 684,822 last week to 568,165 this week, going from 93.6% capacity to 88.85% capacity with 7 performances, and an average ticket of $65. Very poor numbers for a show that has this big of a cast, that is this big of a production. You'd think it costs somewhere between $10 million to $20 million, and it probably has an operating cost of $1 million. So this is definitely a very lackluster start for Bad Cinderella, and I feel like we might have a big flop on our hands. Bob Fosse's Dancin' performed decently to 87.69% capacity and $331,756. And the bad thing is, or I guess the funny thing is, this show made more in its first week than Bad Cinderella did in its first week, and Bad Cinderella also had 318,000 in its first week. So that's a pretty bad look. I also think Dancin' won't do so well, but we'll see. Funny Girl went from 933,728 last week to 1,807,392. The capacity last week was 84.47, and the capacity this week was 90.72. Hadestown went from 800,983 to 671,948, going from 100.19 last week to 92.42% capacity this week. A very bad week of a decrease. I think it will close this year still, just because I think the numbers are so inconsistent. I think we'll get I think I'll know for sure come the fall if this does go another year or not. But I think we're getting near the end. We're getting near the end. Hamilton went from 101.17 last week to 100.39 this week, going from 1,944,489 last week to 1,633,986. Harry Potter, which again I don't cover most of the time because the numbers are the same, had a huge drop, going from 95.57 last week to 82.39 this week, going from 1,475,310 to 1,139,398. And I'm surprised that show hasn't closed yet, just because I feel like it's done subpar compared to what they thought it should do, but it probably won't go anywhere. Kimberly Akimbo had its worst week ever, going from 94.95% capacity to 83.94%, going from 543,746 to 473,617. And these numbers are quite detrimental to Kimberly Akimbo's box office run. I said as long as it does anything below, if it does anything below 500K, it's in trouble, and it is in trouble. And there's potential talks that the Tonys might get delayed because of a strike or something. But point is Kimberly Akimbo is in dire straits of some publicity and some buzz. Again, I think it's a show that's very quaint, that's very low stakes, you could say, and so it's not gonna, it has a somewhat weird concept, but it's not, like, super intriguing, I guess, to the general audience, and, it's just a very small show. It's a show that's maybe should have been in Circle in the Square instead of, a traditional theater, because I think its audience is smaller, and it's not, like, the thing to see. It's got the buzz of Best Musical, but it's not the thing to see. I think the thing to see is Sweeney Todd, Parade, MJ the Musical, those kind of shows. And that's kind of what's, I think, not overshadowing, but I think definitely causing a detriment to Kimberly Akimbo's success. Moulin Rouge went from 1,444,682 to 1,300,053, going from 100.19 last week to 96.88% capacity this week. So not a bad job at all. MJ the Musical went from 99.92 to 93.37, going from 1,715,350 to 1,479,492. And again, this is still amazing numbers for both these shows, but significant drops, especially for MJ. Parade in its first week did amazing, with $914,510 and 94.50% capacity compared to last week's 100.44, and had 7 performances. And again, this show is a limited engagement, so it's not like it's in trouble of closing, but this is a very, very strong start for Parade, and it could not happen to a better show. 6 went from $1,103,101 last week to $936,969, going from 98.5 last week to 92.1 this week. Again, 6 isn't in any trouble at all. It can definitely survive on these numbers, but definitely is interesting to see it's starting to have a bit of a business decline going into this new year. Some Like It Hot did not do so hot this year. I love making those jokes. Going from 76.68 last week to 62.61 this week, going from 829,378 last week to 663,635 this week. Again, will the show make it to the Tonys? Most likely, but again, 100% closing this year, and it could still close even before the Tonys. But I think in order for that to happen, it would need to do like 500,000, 400,000, 300,000. If it does the odd 500,000, 400,000, but then the rest of the month it's all fine, it's okay. But definitely Some Like It Hot and Kimberly Akimbo are on thin ice and need to kind of watch out. And then Sweeney Todd in its first week went from 100% capacity last week to 100% capacity this week, going from 260,691 to $1,526,254 with an average ticket of 169 and a top ticket of 399. Big numbers for Sweeney Todd. I think this revival is going to be huge. Definitely, I think it's going to be the Music Man of the season. And again, very happy that it's happening to a Sondheim show. Book of Mormon dropped to its lowest week, I think, in years, even before COVID. It went from 98.67 last week to 94.31 this week, going from 973,143 to 878,000 this week, which is very poor numbers. The Lion King also had a significant drop, going from 99% to 96%, going from 1,931,308 to 1,685,590. So a lot of shows saw a significant drop. Phantom of the Opera managed to maintain its $2 million streak and go down by like this much, going from like 588,000 to 542,000 overall. Wicked went down considerably from 781,000 to 388,000. Overall, not a terrible week for some shows, but definitely a bunch of significant drops. Some like Wicked or Book of Mormon aren't really effective, but things like Some Like It Hot and Akimbo is a little concerning, and it's gonna create some interesting friction and drama going forward. So that's my thoughts on the grosses. Make sure to like, subscribe, and comment. And I'll see you next week for more Broadway grosses. Peace.